Welcome to the Run Lift Mom podcast, where we're talking about running, lifting, and momming, not necessarily in that order. Today, we are going to be squarely in the running and lifting category with one of the most inspirational moms I know, Emily McCarthy, who is also co-founder of GORUCK. Emily is going to talk to us about The Standard Film, which is a documentary about GORUCK Selection, the toughest endurance event on the planet, and also an attempt to bridge the military-civilian divide. It's a 48-hour challenge that roughly translates to a condensed interpretation of the Army's 24-day assessment and selection. And you guys, I mean it roughly translate in every sense of the word because it's rough and it's intended to be so. It is the toughest of GORUCK events. This movie captures the spirit of it, and Emily is going to talk to us a little bit about what she has seen on the sidelines of these selection events. She makes very clear that she's never done one herself, but obviously as the co-founder of GORUCK, she is very, very close to it. And then we're also just going to talk about the movie and how it translates to running. So regardless of whether you want to do a GORUCK selection, I think this episode is going to inspire you, and it's going to make you appreciate the toughness that we all embody and just the human spirit. Before you hear the interview with Emily, you're going to hear a little snippet from the movie The Standard.
It's, hey, go down this road and don't stop. The standard is forward progression. And by this time we've got, well, in this class we had one person left, but if you had 3 or 4 left, they're gonna get separated, they're not gonna keep the same pace. And now the only thing you have out there besides a dark road or beach is what's going on inside your head. And all the pain is amplified, and the tiredness is amplified. In fact, you're falling asleep walking on your feet.
All right, welcome Emily McCarthy of GORUCK to the Run Lift Mom podcast. Should I say welcome back?
Yes, thanks for having me back, Susie. Always a pleasure.
Emily, today we are going to talk about a new documentary, The Standard. The Standard, and it's all about a very specific GORUCK event. Would you mind telling our listeners just about GORUCK, specifically from the event side, and how the idea for The Standard was born?
The Standard documentary is based on our pinnacle event, which is called GORUCK Selection. And it's based on the history, like as Special Forces selection course, which, basically takes candidates that want to be in special forces. And this is going to be a very intense, sort of process that's going to eliminate the people that, aren't going to be able to make it to the end, to make the standard. And this is actually a departure from a lot of the other events that we put on. In fact, this is the only one of its type. It's the longest. It's 48 hours. It's 80 plus miles. The key difference is that it's an individual event. It's not a team-based event like our other ones, like the Challenge series and some other events that we have. In those team events, the cadre are there to, make you do work, but form you into a team. And they're not trying to get people to quit. That's not the case with selection. The cadre are actively trying to make the individual candidates give up and get inside their head and to really test them to see if they want to be there.
In the show notes, I will link, Emily, to your first interview with us where you talked about GORUCK just as a brand to include the events. But thank you so much for clarifying, this is to mimic as much as possible for civilians what selection is like for special forces.
That's exactly what it came about as, because it wasn't the first event that was created. Our original event was 12 hours overnight, started at 1 a.m. And, basically a few people would meet on a street corner and a cadre, a combat veteran of special operations would lead them through the city and form them into a team. And, there was all sorts of water hazards and carrying logs and PT and whatnot. Selection came a little bit later because that first challenge event, that first tough was in 2010. And I know, Susie, that you were class 261, which is considered OG in the GORUCK world today, because we've had a lot more events since then. But selection came a little bit later, about a year or so later, and we've run, I believe, 21 of them since then, and several of those classes have had 1 or 0 finishers. Only occasionally has there been multiple, but we're still talking single digits. Typically, you have, lots of people sign up. It's a non-refundable kind of very expensive event compared to our other ones. And it's a deterrent where, we always say like, hey, you don't want to do this. Of course, that makes people want to do it. So a lot of people sign up, only about half show up. And then only about half of that half, we're down to a quarter now, make it through what we call the admin or the welcome, the admin phase, which is just basically PT test and some other trials. And then basically to getting into the welcome party and some other phases of selection, within a very short period of time of the whole 48-hour event, very early on, you're whittled down to single digit numbers. That's why it's considered the hardest endurance event out there for open to the public.
It's funny. As I was thinking about speaking with you today, I thought, okay, what can I compare it to, like in the running or the ultra marathoning world? Like, would it be like the death race? Or guys, there's nothing out there like this type of event. And wow, the movie, I'm going to go gaga right now. It does a really, really great job of helping folks who have never participated, or, I mean, if you're like me, guys, you probably have no desire to participate in something this rigorous, but you're curious about it. And the movie does a really great job detailing everything.
Oh, it's a beautiful movie. The director, Phil Wall, has been a longtime GORUCK friend of ours and done some videos over the year. And he worked closely with Jason and our head of marketing, Andy Nelson, and Richard Rice and some of the other cadre to really turn out just a beautiful look at the human mind. And so it's basically a psychological portrait of these. It's more mental toughness that you see than even the physicality towards at some point that just changes in the movie. And I think that's really well expressed in the movie.
I want to get into, there is a part in the movie where the cadre, they're showering the other person with compliments. So the guy who's underperforming is hearing cadre say, "Oh yeah, you're rocking it, man. How'd you train for this? You're awesome." It's to try to get them to quit, like you alluded to. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming this happens often in these events. Have you had candidates who don't fall victim to this, or are we all just really that much in our own heads about the next guy?
I've seen it in other selection events, and of course, it's really exemplified in the standard documentary. And I just want to say to your listeners, Susie, I'm a fly on the wall with this. I have not put my hat into the ring for selection. I've, probably a few years ago, I got kind of pumped up thinking I could, and then I scratched my head and I was like, no, I don't know. I'm going to go back to the tough challenges and some other, events, more my speed, because it's a commitment. And the people who actually succeed, like you're saying, that don't fall victim, they are physically prepared. But that's not all. That's not the whole story. You have to have put in the work to know that the physical stuff will not let you down, right? And of course, this is notwithstanding, medical withdrawals where you want to be there, but your body's just not letting you. So that does happen in both the civilian and military worlds. But in this particular event, like you alluded to, there are some people out there that are just wired a certain way. They are not going to be faced by the noise, or the lack of noise, or the compliments, or the criticism. They are so in lockstep. And, it's for different reasons. Some of them have said afterwards that they knew they were going to finish this the day they signed up. They were confident in their abilities. There's others that have, put their belief in something higher. And that's been a driving force for them. There's others that have, we talk about finding your why, right? That they just have a why that is so important to them that they would endure anything for it. And they're willing to do this in a way that's simulated. I think sometimes the hardest thing about this is that it's really not life or death, right? It's still a simulation of, and it is this way in SF and the selection course. It's ultimately a very intense simulation of reality, right? And I don't know what makes these people wired differently and what draws them to this sort of challenge, but it is true. There's this a difference in something inside their minds.
Knowing what you said about the pass rates and that, only half the people will sign up and then only half of those folks will actually show up. People get spooked. The
Yes.
ones that are there and that make it to the end are cut from different cloth. Wow, it's fascinating. Talk to us about our mind continuing to force us to go when our body says, ooh, tap out, I gotta quit.
Right. Yes. So, like I was saying, Susie, there's less than 2% of the people that, show up to selection that actually have completed it. And it's fascinating because the people that have, a lot of the people that have said, hey, I'm done. I'm volunteering, withdrawing. I've had enough. My body will not move anymore. A lot of them will be sitting around, with the cadre, kindly called the quitter's fire. And they'll say, gosh, I feel fine. Like I could go back out there. So,
no. So they get all the way there. They have that moment of weakness, but then they feel fine a little bit later.
Exactly. So it is this mental game of not allowing that sort of event. And again, I have not done this myself, I'd like to think, we like to think that we would be able to do things if really emergencies and something really got tough. But I think it's probably really hard when you're out there and you're like, man, that fire would feel good right now. I'm really cold. I'm really uncomfortable. I'm really tired. My body's fatigued. And so it really is this almost show of force of confidence and positivity. And we sometimes we like to think about it in terms of like, what has it been like for POWs, to know that like, hey, they could be in there for a long time. It's kind of like facing the hard facts, but not getting too optimistic. We play mental tricks on ourselves. Like, runners, Susie, it's like, oh, well, you're almost there. Well, do you know how that could be devastating if you actually aren't, right? So it's about knowing that, just kind of taking the one step at a time. I think about this sometimes when I'm in a race and it's like, if I just focus on just one more step, and not getting too far ahead of myself. So, I imagine here where everything's kind of, you just don't know what to expect. It runs a certain course, but you don't know how long it's going to be. You don't know what the cadre are going to say or do. And there's just a lot of unknowns and things that are out of your control. And the only thing that you can control is your reaction to it.
I love that you're painting the picture on this because I know that the listener probably is not going to respectfully, Emily, sign up to do a selection event, but they have had that
Same
experience. Yeah, but they've had the experience that you're describing that you've observed with these candidates. And it's that there's not any fanfare. Listener, if you've been at the end of a marathon that only had 500 participants to begin with, you know that last, 3-4 miles, you are on your own. It's a pick them up, put them down, step by step kind of thing. And so it's really cool to hear you describing that, obviously totally next level. But a similar thing goes on between the ears.
Yes, absolutely. And I think these marathons and triathlons and ultra marathons, I think, we're talking about fitness at a very high level. The main difference between those events that, for the most part, and the selection is that you can train and the course ahead of time, kind of what to expect, for the most part, minus any sort of, haphazard things that happen, like the weather. But with selection, they don't know exactly. They're not allowed to eat when they want to eat and stop when they want to stop, or know the time. It's like all those control elements are taken away, and it is lonely at the end. And I think it's purposefully structured. So it's really, at the beginning of selection, it's really loud. And this admin phase, it's this trying to induce stress. And there's a lot of yelling and drill sergeant type stuff, which is not what our other events are about at all. This is the unique event, where the cadre are trying to get you to second guess yourself very early on. And it's noisy and it's very disorienting. But there's another part at the end, the long walk, like you described, like the end of the marathon, where you're by yourself for a long period of time and no one's giving you any feedback. You don't know what time it is. It's been a long time since you slept or eaten. And really, you just got to keep moving forward, as much as you can. And you're the only person that's going to be motivating yourself at that point.
Listener, you have to see The Standard. It is such a beautiful, beautiful movie. And what I mean by this is, beautiful music contrasted by this suffering that Emily is describing. It will get you hype. It will give you a brand new respect for the standard, meaning the standard that our military is held to. Emily, can you plug the movie and tell us where we can find it, how we can support it?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity, Susie. It is a beautiful movie. I had seen versions early on, and I thought it was going to be cool, but really the final product really brought tears to my eyes in some parts. I found it very moving, and it is about pushing limits and building bridges, right? And GORUCK has been since the beginning all about building bridges between the civilian and military worlds and saying, like, wait, what do we have in common with each other? And it's reflected in this toughest endurance event. So you can see it on all the normal places, iTunes, Prime Video, and then all the random ones, that I had never even heard of, but YouTube as well. You can rent it, you can buy it, but The Standard is really, I find it to be very motivational and very, it's all about like the human spirit and what we're capable of.
Can I tell you something, Emily, before we wrap this up, that I thought only my husband was going to hear, but I guess now I'm going to put it on the podcast for all to hear? I cried. I was in tears by the end. And you're right. It's not that I want to do that, but I want to emulate that human spirit. And you guys, this movie will bring you to tears.
It brought me too, Susie. So you're not the only one.
We're in good company. Well, Emily McCarthy of GORUCK, thank you so much for coming on to speak with me about GORUCK events as well as the Standard documentary.
Thanks, Susie. It's been always great to talk to you, and good luck in your upcoming race.
Thank you so much, Emily, for coming on again to the Run Lift Mom podcast. She obviously represents her husband and GORUCK co-founder, Jason McCarthy, as well as the director, Phil Wall, who did such an amazing, amazing job on this film. You guys, I want you to swipe up or click details in the show notes. I've got links to everywhere you can find this movie, to include Amazon. If you are a Prime member, you can see this for free. It is also on iTunes, all the places. I really want you to see this. It's amazing. If you're a runner, I know it's going to inspire you. If you're a mother, I know it's going to inspire you. And you guys, until I get into your earpiece again, remember, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. That's from 1 Timothy 4:8, and this has been the Run Lift Mom podcast.
again brings back that mental toughness. Like, how far can you dig inside your mind to go, it's got to be around the corner. I can go another foot. I can put my foot in front of the other one more time.
Thank you for listening to Run with Mom. There's